Hello again. There was a time, and not so very long ago really, when freedom of speech, that is to say being able to say anything, however unpleasant or offensive it might be to others, was a valued right in a democracy. These days, the very idea is seen as dangerous and the first step towards anarchy, racist attacks and the persecution of any and all minorities. This is because free speech might lead to what is now known as hate speech. That is to say, saying that you dislike this or that group. Of course, if you say you hate conservatives and think they're the scum of the earth, that's one thing. Most of those who are dubious about free speech are fine with that. But suppose you're not keen on seeing penises in a women's changing room. Whoa, right there is hate speech against transsexuals. Suppose I'm opposed to immigration from the Indian subcontinent. Racism, of course. This is what some people are afraid will happen on Twitter now that Elon Musk has taken over, that anybody will be able to express views with which the left wing disagrees. In the description to this video, I give a link to an article from the Guardian newspaper which pretty well sums up the fears of liberal and progressive types about free speech as it touches upon Twitter. We learn that some people are afraid Musk's takeover will allow misinformation, disinformation, abuse and hate speech to flourish on the website more than it already does. Well, of course, what is misinformation today has an awkward habit of being accurate information tomorrow. One recalls when Facebook and YouTube were labelling the idea that COVID had escaped from a Chinese laboratory as misinformation last year, but this is now seen by the American government as the most likely source of the epidemic. Then too, why shouldn't we be allowed to abuse each other on the internet? People abuse me here and I can't say it's done me any harm. As far as hate speech goes, there are laws which prevent us from threatening violence to people, and so Twitter doesn't really need to moderate itself to stop that. Neither does Facebook and nor does YouTube. If I say I'm going to kill somebody or burn down their house, then that's a police matter, whether I say it in the street or here on YouTube or even on Twitter. None of those reasons seem to me to justify Twitter censoring what appears on its site. There's a long quote in the Guardian's piece from a group called Digital Rights Watch, and they say this: while free speech is important, you have to account for asymmetries of power and other barriers that stop people from speaking freely. Musk's style of free speech absolutism will tilt the scales in favour of the rich and powerful, who can silence or bully critics. What Musk really seems to want is freedom from accountability. Musk's proposed approach to content moderation will likely make Twitter a less safe place for many people to speak freely, while allowing powerful disinformation and propaganda campaigns to spread unchecked. Well, how could a website be an unsafe space? I don't get that at all. Even people that come onto this channel and disagree with what I say can hardly say that it's unsafe for them to be here, could they? And what are these asymmetries of power and barriers which stop people speaking freely? I don't get it. There's no moderation on this channel, but I don't see how that makes the comments here unsafe. Nor do I see how it creates barriers that stop people speaking freely. I would have thought that lack of moderation had the opposite effect. Amnesty International has already been talking about toxic Twitter if Elon Musk has his way with his zany ideas on free speech. One idea of his, which might be controversial but is nevertheless quite interesting, is that people should use their real names rather than hiding behind pseudonyms. I'm bound to say there might be something in that. I wouldn't dream of saying anything on the internet without signing my name to it, any more than I would write an anonymous letter. On some sites, comments really do resemble what we used to call poison pen letters, and it is the fact that people can hide behind false names which gives them the courage to say horrible things to strangers. It would be interesting to see if making people use their real names would have the effect of getting people to be more polite. It would also make folk less likely, I suppose, to say things which are illegal or likely to provoke violence. I don't really use Twitter, although I have an account which I haven't used for years, so this doesn't affect me. But I do find something disturbing when talk of free speech starts making people uneasy and is automatically equated with hate speech and so on.